We often think about enemies as, purely external things like bullies or bad influences, maybe just the harshness of the world outside. But what if the first real enemy a child meets isn't outside the home at all? What if it's deeply, painfully within it? Today, we're doing a deep dive into some really powerful material. It's titled, A Child's First Enemy is a Broken Parent. Now, this isn't about pointing fingers or placing blame. It's about exploring a difficult truth, a truth about how unhealed wounds, maybe unresolved trauma, or even just emotional immaturity in caregivers, how that can profoundly shape a child's world. Even when, and this is important, even when deep love is also present.
Absolutely. And our mission in this deep dive really is to pull out the most critical insights from this material. We want to help you understand the, well, often devastating impacts, sometimes subtle, sometimes not, of emotionally broken parents, and the generational cycles they can unintentionally set in motion. But also, crucially, the path towards healing. It's long, yes, but it is absolutely possible to break free.
Yeah, this can definitely be a sensitive area to explore. But the insights here, they feel vital for understanding ourselves, our relationships, and just the really complex interplay of love and pain sometimes. Okay, so let's start digging into what this actually means. The material kicks off by sort of challenging our assumptions, right?
Yeah.
About what brokenness in a parent even looks like. It's not always the obvious stuff.
That's exactly right. And it's a really crucial starting point because, a broken parent isn't always the one who's visibly angry or drinking or slamming doors. The source makes it clear that sometimes their brokenness is much quieter. It might be hidden behind a smile, or maybe they provide for all the physical needs, food, shelter. But the child is essentially starved emotionally. You might even see them praised in public, admired in the community.
While behind closed doors.
Exactly. While their child is learning to walk on eggshells, constantly gauging the mood, never feeling truly secure, it shows the many faces this kind of subtle brokenness can wear. Think about it. A parent who never really experienced genuine love themselves, well, they're going to struggle to give it authentically. It's just hard. Or a mother who lives with this constant, maybe unspoken fear, she can pass that fear right down. We see fathers, perhaps unhealed from their own experiences of rejection, who then, maybe without even realizing it, reject their own kids in small ways. It could be the parent who's physically there in the room, but emotionally just absent, checked out. Or the caregiver who demands absolute perfection because their own internal world feels so chaotic and out of control.
Wow. That really paints a picture of what it looks like from the outside, or maybe from the parent's perspective. But for the child actually living it, the material says it just boils down to confusion.
Utter confusion.
Yeah.
One day, you get affection, warmth. The next day, cold silence, maybe irritation. Praise suddenly flips to sharp criticism, and there's no clear reason why. The rules keep changing. Safety becomes conditional. It depends entirely on the parent's internal state, which the child can't possibly understand or predict. And through all this inconsistency, this sort of emotional whiplash, the child learns a really painful lesson deep down. Love isn't actually safe here.
Right. That fundamental sense of security is just missing.
Exactly. And if we connect this to basic child development, children are biologically wired to attach. It's instinct. They don't just want love from their caregivers, they need it, like food and water. It's essential for healthy development. So when the very source of that life-sustaining love is also the source of deep confusion and pain, it creates this profound internal conflict, a contradiction they can't resolve.
The source gives some really specific, almost gut-wrenching examples of this, like, I love you coming right after a slap, or I'm doing this for your own good, being said right after some kind of humiliation, or hearing you're too sensitive when you're crying real tears, essentially invalidating your feelings. So given those kinds of mixed messages, how does the material say a child actually processes that? What happens inside them?
Well, the key thing is, children lack the emotional maturity and the perspective to see the parent's behavior for what it is their issue. Instead, they internalize the dysfunction. They make it about themselves. So they start to believe things like, if mom screams at me, it must be because I'm bad. Or if dad ignores me, I guess I'm just not interesting enough. Or maybe if they don't show up for my school play, I mustn't be worth the effort.
The core insight here from the material is that the child starts seeing their reflection in what it calls the broken mirror of their parents' behavior. It's a fundamentally distorted view of themselves. And that distortion, well, it can tragically stick with them for a lifetime, shaping how they see themselves and the world. That's heartbreaking, the way a child takes on that burden. And the material also talks about how this often isn't the start of the story, right? These patterns are often inherited.
Yes, absolutely. That's another compelling layer. The source really unpacks how often these broken parents were themselves wounded children. Maybe they grew up assuming emotional distance is just normal because, say, their own father never once said, "I love you." Or maybe they learned to suppress all their feelings because their mother used guilt anytime they expressed needs.
So they're repeating patterns they don't even recognize sometimes.
Often, yes. And here's a really profound insight the material offers. Parenting doesn't magically heal your old wounds. If anything, it tends to expose them, brutally sometimes. Why? Because children, just by being children, mirror back everything that's unhealed in the parent. Think about it. A child's natural neediness can trigger a parent's deep discomfort with vulnerability if that's their wound. A child's raw honesty might feel threatening to a parent who relies on emotional walls to cope. A child's healthy push for independence, for autonomy, can feel like a deep betrayal to a parent with unresolved abandonment issues. So the parent reacts, they might lash out or withdraw or criticize, but the fight isn't really with the child in that moment. The fight is actually with their own past, their own ghosts, their own unhealed pain. But the child, they don't see any of that history. They just feel the impact. Unloved, unsafe, not good enough.
It's such a painful cycle. The source also breaks down what it calls the many faces of broken parenting. It highlights how damaging these specific patterns can be, even the ones that might seem subtle or sometimes even, socially acceptable on the surface. Could you walk us through some of those types, the distinct ways this brokenness shows up according to the material?
Yes, the source gives some really clear and helpful distinctions. Let's touch on a few key ones. First, there's the narcissistic parent. Here, everything revolves around the parent's needs, their image, their feelings. The child learns their role is to basically perform, to reflect the parent's glory, rather than discovering and being their authentic self.
So the child's own needs get lost.
Completely overshadowed. Then there's the absent parent. Now, this isn't just physical absence, though it can be. It's often profound emotional unavailability, maybe due to addiction or workaholism or depression or just deep emotional shutdown. The child feels essentially invisible, unseen, unheard, like their inner world just doesn't matter.
Okay. What else?
Next is the controlling parent. This parent, often driven by their own anxiety and fear, tries to micromanage everything the child does, every choice, every move. They might punish any attempt at autonomy, the result. The child often grows up incredibly anxious, second-guessing themselves constantly, lacking trust in their own judgment.
That sounds exhausting for the child.
It is. Then there's the victim parent. This is the parent who plays the martyr. Everything they do is framed as a huge sacrifice for the child. Love gets tangled up with guilt. It's like love is transactional and the child learns they're constantly in debt, an unbearable weight. Love feels like an obligation.
Oh, wow. Weaponizing love like that.
It's incredibly damaging. And finally, the material highlights the chaotic parent. This is the parent who is wildly inconsistent. One day they might be super fun, engaging, loving. The next day, explosive anger, unpredictable withdrawal. This constant uncertainty breeds extreme hypervigilance in the child. They're always scanning, trying to anticipate the next shift, walking on emotional landmines. They never learn what real, consistent safety feels like.
These descriptions are so vivid. And the material makes it clear the impact doesn't just stop when childhood ends, does it? It talks about a profound psychological cost that carries right into adulthood. The scars don't just fade away.
Not at all. They actively shape adult reality. The material connects these childhood experiences directly to very specific struggles many adults face. We see pervasive attachment issues, for instance. The adult might become overly clingy in relationships, desperate for connection but terrified of being left. Or they might become extremely avoidant, pushing intimacy away because it feels too dangerous. Sometimes, confusingly, they swing between both.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
There's often intense people-pleasing. This was learned early on as a survival strategy. If I just keep everyone happy, maybe I'll be safe. We also frequently find perfectionism. It's like this desperate, unending quest to finally earn the love or approval they never felt they got, to avoid that deep shame. And underpinning much of this is often a core feeling of low self-worth, an internalized belief learned in childhood that they're somehow fundamentally flawed or not good enough.
That internal critic can be relentless.
Absolutely. There's also often a deep-seated fear of abandonment. Even in relatively stable adult relationships, there's this constant background hum of anxiety, anticipating rejection or being left, and finally, emotional suppression. Having learned early that their feelings were unsafe, inconvenient, or wrong, they learn to just numb them, hide them, or disconnect from them entirely. They struggle to even name what they feel, let alone manage it healthily. And the material points out quite powerfully how these patterns inevitably show up in adult life, in romantic relationships, friendships, even in how they approach their own parenting. Sadly, sometimes continuing the very cycle that hurt them.
That point about potentially continuing the cycle is sobering. There's also a mention in the material of what it calls a cruelest irony, that many of these parents did protect their children in certain ways, maybe from poverty or physical danger or perceived threats from the outside world, but they couldn't protect them from the one place the danger was actually coming from, themselves.
Exactly. And that very paradox, the source of love being the source of pain, creates something the material specifically identifies as a trauma bond. It's this incredibly confusing mix of feelings the child carries, often into adulthood. Things like, I love them, but I'm also afraid of them. Or, I feel grateful for what they gave me, but I'm so angry about what they didn't. I still need their approval, but I desperately want to run away. It's this constant push and pull. The source also notes how common it is for adult children to defend or make excuses for their parents' harmful behavior. And it stresses that while empathy for a parent's own difficult past is valuable, it shouldn't erase the truth of the harm caused. You can absolutely hold both. You can understand, maybe even forgive, and still clearly name the ways their actions hurt you. Acknowledging the pain is key.
That's a really important distinction. Empathy doesn't require denial. Okay, so this all sounds incredibly difficult, but the material doesn't leave us there, does it? There's a hopeful path forward. It talks about breaking free, healing from the first enemy, and emphasizes this isn't about staying angry or seeking revenge, but about reclaiming your own truth, rebuilding your sense of self, and essentially rewriting the script for your own life. So what are the key steps for healing that the source lays out?
Right. The healing journey is central. The material outlines 6 really clear, actionable steps. First is acknowledgement. This means truly stop minimizing or dismissing the pain you experienced. The core message here is powerful. If it hurt you, it matters. Period. It doesn't matter if others seem to have it worse. Your pain is valid.
Okay, start by validating your own experience. Makes sense.
Second, naming the patterns. This involves consciously identifying how your childhood experiences shaped your fundamental beliefs about love, about safety, about your own worth. It means recognizing how these show up now in your adult relationships, noticing your triggers, paying attention to that inner critic, your self-talk.
Becoming aware of the legacy.
Exactly. Third, therapy and support. The material really underscores this. You don't have to, and probably shouldn't try to, do this heavy lifting alone. Seeking professional help from a therapist or finding support groups with others who understand can be incredibly beneficial for untangling these deep emotional knots.
Don't go it alone. Got it.
Fourth is grieving the ideal. This one is profound. It means allowing yourself to mourn the parent you needed, the parent you deserved, but never actually had. This isn't about blaming. It's a necessary, even sacred grief. Allowing yourself to feel that loss actually makes space for real healing and acceptance to begin.
Grieving what you didn't have. That's powerful.
It really is. Fifth is setting boundaries. This is crucial, especially if the parent is still in your life. You have the right, and maybe even the need, to protect your emotional peace. The material emphasizes that setting boundaries, which might mean limiting contact or changing how you interact, isn't about disrespect. Sometimes it's simply about survival and self-preservation.
Protecting your peace. Okay. And the last step.
The sixth, and perhaps the most empowering, is reparenting yourself. This means consciously starting to give yourself all the things you missed out on in childhood. Give yourself the patience you didn't receive. Offer yourself the encouragement you craved. Learn to provide yourself with the emotional safety and consistent affection you needed. It's about becoming your own nurturing, supportive inner parent.
Learning to give yourself what you needed. That feels incredibly hopeful. And this section wraps up with such a powerful, empowering message. The cycle can end with you. That you're not doomed to just repeat the patterns that broke you. You actually have the power to interrupt that generational pattern, to become a source of healing, not further harm for yourself and maybe for others. You don't have to aim for perfection, just presence, honesty, being real about your own journey. You don't need to somehow erase the past, but you can stop it from dictating your future.
Beautifully put. And just to reiterate that core message from our deep dive today, a child's first and perhaps most formative enemy is often a broken parent. But it's typically born not from malice, not from intentional cruelty, but from their own unhealed pain. The real betrayal often isn't about the presence of hate, but the absence of consistent safety, of reliable emotional presence. The enemy isn't always some monster. More often, it's a deeply wounded soul struggling themselves.
But, and this is the crucial takeaway, the profound truth this material offers, is that healing is absolutely possible. It's achievable. And it really begins in that moment. You decide to stop defending the pain, stop making excuses for it, and start instead defending your own peace, your own truth.
Exactly. And maybe just a final word to you, the listener, if any of this resonates deeply. If you grew up with a parent who fits this description, please know you didn't deserve the confusion. You certainly didn't earn the blame that you might have carried. You were always, always worthy of love that didn't come with conditions or fear or pain. Love that felt safe.
And maybe most importantly, it is truly never too late to start giving that safe, unconditional love and acceptance to yourself. This has been a deep dive into some incredibly impactful and I think really important material. We certainly hope it gives you much to reflect on.